The economic impact of Trump's 2025 tariff policy on the U.S. and Asia. Introduction. In April 2025, former President Donald Trump introduced a sweeping tariff policy that marks a significant shift in U.S. economic and trade strategy. The new policy imposes a universal 10% tariff on all imported goods and additional targeted tariffs on countries with large trade surpluses with the United States, particularly in Asia. With China, for instance, the effective tariff rate is now 54%. This protectionist approach has sparked international reactions and will have profound consequences on both the U.S. domestic economy and its Asian trading partners. Implications for the U.S. economy. 2.1 Rising consumer prices and inflation. One of the most immediate effects of blanket tariffs is higher prices for imported goods. Many everyday items, such as clothing, electronics, appliances, and food products, rely heavily on foreign supply chains, especially from Asia. Estimates from Yale's Budget Lab indicate that the average U.S. household will incur an additional $3,800 per year in costs. Low and middle-income households will feel the greatest burden, as they spend a larger portion of income on essentials, many of which are imported. Inflation could rise by at least 1%, according to EY and JP Morgan, exacerbating the cost of living crisis and reducing real wages. 2.2 Risk of stagflation. Tariffs often lead to stagflation, a situation where economic growth slows while inflation rises. With production costs increasing due to more expensive imported materials and retaliatory tariffs limiting U.S. exports, domestic businesses may face falling profits and stagnant hiring. GDP growth is projected to fall by 1% in 2025 and 1.4% in 2026. JP Morgan has increased the odds of a recession to 60% for the 2025 to 2026 period, citing tariffs as a key driver. 2.3 Disruption to supply chains. U.S. companies across sectors, especially manufacturing and technology, rely on global supply chains rooted in Asia. Industries such as automotive, consumer electronics, and pharmaceuticals face rising input costs. Companies may pass these costs to consumers, delay investments, or shift supply chains away from China to other lower-cost countries, causing short to medium-term disruptions. 2.4 Political and strategic consequences. Domestically, Trump's tariffs may appeal to nationalist sentiments and manufacturing-heavy states. However, they could increase tensions with business groups, retailers, and financial institutions that support free trade. Impact on Asian economies. 3.1 China, the primary target. China faces the harshest measures, with a total tariff level reaching 54% on its exports to the U.S. This policy directly targets key sectors in China's economy. Export-driven industries, like electronics, machinery, textiles, and steel, are likely to see reduced access to the U.S. market. Job losses in China are anticipated in regions heavily reliant on trade with the U.S., potentially increasing domestic political pressure. Yuan devaluation may be used as a tool to soften the blow, but this risks capital outflow and economic instability. However, China may respond with greater investment in the global south, strengthening regional partnerships, such as with ASEAN and the Belt and Road Initiative, and shifting focus to domestic consumption. 3.2 Southeast Asia. Mixed outcomes. Countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia may experience opportunity and risk. Positive. Companies relocating manufacturing out of China to avoid U.S. tariffs could choose Southeast Asian nations as alternative production hubs. Negative. If U.S. tariffs expand or shift to include products made in Southeast Asia as part of de-risking from Asia, their export sectors could be negatively impacted. Moreover, these economies are heavily export-dependent, and any global trade slowdown caused by tariff wars can reduce their economic growth. 3.3 Japan and South Korea. Both countries are U.S. allies but face significant tariffs, e.g. 20 to 24% depending on the product category. As advanced economies with deep ties to the U.S. tech and automotive sectors, they may lose competitiveness in the U.S. market particularly in automobiles and semiconductors. Japanese firms like Toyota or Sony may need to increase U.S.-based production to avoid penalties. South Korean conglomerates, Samsung, Hyundai, may explore trade routes via third countries or local U.S. production to minimize exposure. 3.4 India could be both a beneficiary and a target. While not directly hit with the highest tariff brackets initially, its IT services and pharmaceutical exports to the U.S. may face scrutiny or higher duties in future rounds. However, it may also benefit from U.S. efforts to diversify away from China, with American companies looking to India as an alternative base for manufacturing or services. Broader geopolitical and strategic effects. 4.1 Trade realignment. Trump's tariff policy may reshape global trade patterns. Countries may increasingly trade with each other outside of the U.S., building regional value chains. This could accelerate efforts like the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, in Asia, stronger China-EU, or China-Gulf ties, as both seek new markets. Increased ASEAN unity, as member states try to present a coordinated trade and investment strategy. 4.2 Rise of protectionism. Trump's policies may embolden other countries to adopt protectionist stances, leading to fragmentation of global trade rules, challenges to the World Trade Organization, WTO, as unilateral tariffs violate many WTO principles, erosion of trust in multilateral institutions and trade agreements. 4.3 Strategic shifts in investment. Multinational corporations may respond by reshoring production to the U.S., onshoring, friendshoring to allied countries like Mexico, Canada, and possibly India or the Philippines, avoiding China-based operations, which may hurt China's long-term FDI inflows. Conclusion. Trump's 2025 tariff strategy is one of the most aggressive protectionist policies in modern American history. While aimed at correcting trade imbalances and revitalizing American manufacturing, it carries significant risks for the U.S. economy, including inflation, consumer burden, and recession. For Asia, the consequences vary. China faces the greatest threat, while Southeast Asia and India may benefit in some ways. However, all are vulnerable to broader global trade disruption. The long-term effects will depend on how countries adapt, whether retaliatory measures intensify, and if global institutions can mediate rising tensions.